He's the only veterinarian to serve in the United States House of Representatives, and he has clear views about politics, business, and the role of veterinary medicine in society. I'm Dan Verdon, editor of DVM News Magazine. I recently sat down with Dr. Kurt Schrader, a Democrat from Oregon who's serving his first term in Congress. We spoke at the recently concluded commencement ceremonies for Ross University in Madison Square Garden in New York City. Here are excerpts from that interview. My first question would be, why did you choose politics?
Well, I think it's a natural evolution for a veterinarian who's usually respected and trusted in the community to be asked to engage in a variety of things, and we're usually very proactive. You don't get into veterinary medicine because you're afraid to speak up or advocate for your cause, your animals, and same thing holds true in public service. So I had children in school and was interested in my community and chamber and planning commission, and pretty soon I'm volunteering a little bit. And if you're a decent business person, you can have a great staff and they can make things work, and you can afford one night a week or 2 nights a week, and unfortunately then it gets bigger and bigger, and so you just get interested, I think, over a period of time, and people have looking for leadership skills and responsibility, and veterinarians are both of those.
Can you talk a little about your training as a veterinarian and how it maybe has influenced policy on the Hill?
Well, we're new to the Hill, but I can tell you in my stint in the state legislature for 12 years that being a veterinarian gives you almost an immediate cachet with both the animal welfare folks and the livestock folks. And as you well know, oftentimes there's some dynamic tension going on there. And so you're able to oftentimes intercede and broker solutions to problems that ordinarily would be very difficult for people to come to agreement on. I think veterinarians by their nature are problem solvers. We're not usually ideologically driven. You know, we don't have a strong crusade that we're fighting for except the health and well-being of our animals. And that bridges a lot of chasms out there between different groups, and you can make a huge, huge contribution to animal health and animal welfare and, frankly, the economic viability of this country by getting engaged in some of these things. When methamphetamine is a big issue in this country, a huge issue out west where I live in Oregon, and there was a movement to ban certain ingredients, which is appropriate, some of the levels of which, though, would have affected routine veterinary practitioners. And we were able to talk to some of the law enforcement folks and some of my colleagues and find ways to broker thoughtful solutions to that didn't impact the private practices or ability to deliver quality medicine to our patients. So the background you have as a veterinarian, you get 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of vet school. In my state, there's an internship you have to go through. You get pretty good at learning how to work with people and very versed in the issues. And I think that gives you, again, the opportunity to really help out where others wouldn't be able to intercede at all.
What have been some of the most interesting, I guess, issues for you so far in your...
On Capitol Hill?
On Capitol Hill, yes.
Well, obviously the healthcare debate is a big one. I view it through 2 different prisms. One is the healthcare issues itself as a health professional. Part of the concern I had was to make sure that in the public health arena that the veterinary medical community was a big player in that. So my town hall folks thought I was trying to, beef up my opportunity for job employment and stuff. And I point, no, the references in the Veterinary Act are just for, public health officials. It doesn't do anything for an individual like myself. But that's a big piece of it because, as you know, veterinarians play heavily, I think more authoritatively than even our medical colleagues in the zoonotic disease area, the food safety area, bioterrorism, I think parasitology. We're uniquely situated compared to many of the medical doctors coming out of school. The other area I saw through was small business. Most veterinarians are fairly small businessmen. Few employees struggle to meet the payroll, much less the healthcare costs. And so any health care bill was supposed to make sure that these guys weren't impacted in an adverse way, in my opinion. Encourage them to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, we were able to accomplish that. There's some controversy out there about that, but I think it's much more business friendly than a lot of people understand. So it was an important piece of legislation. That was very huge. And quite frankly, this session's been almost overwhelming. I mean, as a new member, gosh, I went to veterinary college and I learned how to study 24/7 because that's what I've been doing in Congress since I got there. One major bill after another.
All eyes have been on the Gulf Coast, and I wanted to ask you about, and veterinarians, I guess, have been involved in the some of the cleanup, and I wanted to ask you about your thoughts of a veterinarian's role, I guess, in responding to disasters.
Well, that's big. Obviously, it's become a big issue. The hurricanes in the south. We actually had some extensive flooding in the Pacific Northwest a few years ago that brought to light the inadequacy of the disaster plans when it came to animal welfare. I remember personally swimming horses out of one of my friend's barns across an area that was becoming inundated to avoid them having been drowned and stuff. And what has happened, I think a lot of states at this point, through some work with the veterinary medical community as a whole, now have veterinarians on staff for disaster preparedness. Our office, my little Clackamas County Veterinary Office in Oregon City, participates in that. So if there's a disaster, some of my team are able to go out and help. And frankly, again, we're in a very, very good spot. Obviously, we know how to relate to the animals. Animals are not sometimes as scared as an individual is. One needs to know how to approach them in the right way and make sure you can get them taken care of. So again, the veterinary community, I think, is probably absolutely the unique arbiter of that sort of service when it comes to the emergencies. I would argue, and we're trying to do this right now in the Homeland Security Department, make sure that there's a chief veterinary officer involved there too. Again, for the scope of problems and the breadth of problems and the depth of the problems, I think you need that sort of expertise to make sure, frankly, our citizens as well as our animal friends are protected.
What issues currently are on your kind of hot plate?
We've got a ton of them right now. I mean, I'd say we're right now dealing with the ability of the government to provide basic jobs for folks. This is still a big recession. It's going to be a long haul coming out. Different veterinary practices have been hit at different levels, and it varies across the country, of course, depending on your community. I think many small animal practitioners have been hit, but not as bad as perhaps some of the rest of the community. I've heard anecdotally from my veterinary community that the equine practitioner's been hit 30-40%. Large animal, perhaps similar, maybe not quite so much. The farmers are still able to get loans, at least, it seems like, for the most part. The rest of the small business community can't get money at all, so it's very different for veterinarians to keep their line of credit going, which is necessary to buy your drugs and equipment and stuff. So we're focused primarily on the jobs area. That's our biggest push right now. I'd also, coming from the Pacific Northwest, the energy issue has a big impact on my region, as perhaps it does on every region. We'd like to think of ourselves as a renewable energy haven, but how we transition, frankly, from our fossil fuel economy, you mentioned the oil spill and stuff. I mean, it's going to be very, very important for us to learn how to get off of those fossil fuels. We're not as smart as we think we are. My years in veterinary medicine, 33 years now in veterinary medicine, it's shown me the more I stay in the field, the less I think I know. And I think that's an admonition perhaps some of our oil drilling colleagues should appreciate also. We can have all this technology, but Mother Nature can get in the way. And so we have to be very smart about how we transition to our energy economy. The other thing that I keep hearing from a lot of folks, and again, this is not a unique veterinary issue, but is the deficit issue. People are very concerned. Yes, thank you for the jobs while my jobs are drying up. I've had a lot of great testimonials about the Recovery Act and some of the legislation we've passed. But we can't keep spending. We have to start reining that back in and get private enterprise back on its feet. So to that end, we're starting to cut back on some of the emergency measures that we've been putting out so far, trying to get our own books back into balance. I could go into some more detail on that. And at the same time, being on the Small Business Committee and the Ag Committee, we're trying to push out lending opportunities. Right now, as any veterinarian knows out there, it's almost impossible to get a loan. We've pushed very hard. I'm actually in charge. I'm the chairman of the subcommittee on finance and tax, and so we deal with the lending issues. We put out a bill, HR 3854, that empowers the Small Business Administration to get more actively involved, guarantee the loans at higher rates to make it more attractive to the banks that are worried about their own balance sheets, cut the fees to make it very accessible. There's even a small line of credit that we put out in the Recovery Act that we're trying to build up in the bill I passed. It's a small credit line of about $35,000. It's interest-free, 100% guaranteed by the Small Business Administration, and could be a lifeline to veterinary practices. I remember in 2001, when we had a recession, my bank called in my credit line. All of a sudden, it was a loan. It was a liability. It wasn't an asset. And so I would have loved to have had this type of program to help me through that tough time. We made it, but it was tough.
Some of the key challenges, I guess, as a small business owner, what are some of those key challenges you think over the next 5 years?
Well, I think veterinary medicine is always evolving. Certainly it's evolved tremendously in my lifetime. I came in at the tail end of the James Herriot era, and he was extolling the virtues of antibiotics finally and steroids. And that was where my career sort of started. And certainly those are great assets, and you could do amazing things to animals. It wasn't just potions and liniments anymore. There's actually stuff you could do to save lives. And it has evolved. I mean, we used to do a little radiology when I first started. Now you're doing diagnostic imaging all over the place. The opportunity for IV therapy was in its, I would say, infancy when I got out of veterinary college. You didn't do IVs in cats, at least not very easily. And now we do IV in kittens. Well, my veterinary technicians do, let's be honest here. We also have the pharmaceuticals. When I got out of college, the way you castrated a horse is you used a twitch and hope the guy holding that thing was going to be good enough as you made your incisions. And that would be an exciting operation from time to time. Nowadays, we're much more humane. We have great medications that you don't have to be a macho guy to do these things. And frankly, it's 80-90% woman profession right now. You can use a gentle or touch, get the job done. The horses recover easily. The orthopedic surgery, we used to have all these broken bones. Now it's a lot of soft tissue surgery. It's a great profession that's evolved. And I think the trick here is to continue to stay on the cutting edge. If you want to be a good veterinarian, I think there's going to be more group practices. There will be more corporate type practices, hopefully still with the same veterinary oath behind them of great service and that personal touch that I think makes veterinarians unique in the medical profession, where we still are able to spend time with our patients and our clients. And I hope and pray that that doesn't go away. Learning how to deal with the generic community. I mean, there's going to be a lot more generic drugs, I think, hopefully, that will become available. We'll be able to operate within that purview. I think we're going to have to be thinking more and more in terms of how we link up with specialists. In the old days, it was we versus them sometimes when you're a general practitioner. Now it's got to be a coordinated care, just like in the human medicine. We talk about coordinated care all the time. And I think we have to be walking that talk in the veterinary field also. And small business. I mean, you got to pay attention. This climate, the rules are a lot more complicated. When I got to veterinary school, I did my own taxes. That's how old I am. But nowadays, it's a lot tougher, and you have to have an army of professionals aligned with you or behind you to make sure you know how to keep your practice going. And I think there's some great challenges. Last thing I'd mention, there's the public health and food safety. I mean, right now, I would hope that a lot of young men and women in the veterinary profession are looking at going into those areas. We desperately need that. It's a very, very important facet of our life. Communicable disease is the world's becoming a smaller place, and as a result of that, some of the communicable and zoonotic diseases that we haven't seen in the past will become more present here. As I mentioned before, the threat of bioterrorism is a big, big deal. So I hope that a lot of veterinarians go into that area. The large animal medicine, boy, we need food animal practitioners. I mean, that is absolutely a critical piece of the landscape, both for rural America and, again, to ensure the safety of our food supply. We do have the safest food in the world right now, and sometimes that's forgotten. A lot of the food scares that we have are, frankly, from foreign countries. So we have to beef up the relationships and the standards so that the food imported into this country is held to the same rigorous standard that our farmers and our veterinarians hold ours to.
Do you feel the food animal shortage of veterinarians can be solved?
I think so. Again, with the advent of chemical restraint and anesthetics the way they are, you don't have to be a burly 200-pound guy wrestling down this. When I went to school, I was taught the Georgia body tie. You know what the Georgia body tie is? No, this is in the old days. This is the way you restrained a huge cow. You did this, loop these ropes over the cow, and you were able to pull it to the ground using pressure points. Precursor of, maybe I was just smarter. We were just precursor of acupressure. But you had to have some strength to be able to, hang on to these horses and these cattle and stuff. But nowadays, with chemical restraint, a small 110-pound woman could easily take care of these animals. And so I think that will open things up. There are going to be I've talked to a lot of men and women in my home state that are interested in food animal medicine. They want to be able to earn a fair rate of return. Does that sound familiar? Like with our medical professionals, it's tough to get out of med school after all the loans. Veterinary education is extremely expensive. So to be able to afford to go into food animal medicine, which is usually not as remunerative as the small animal field, we've got to work hard to make sure that we support veterinary education and keep those costs down. But students are very interested in that, and we give loan forgiveness provisions for practicing in rural areas, taking public service jobs. I think there's a great opportunity for food animal medicine to blossom once again.
Probably a segue into a topic that I think is probably very important, but I wanted to bring it up and ask you about your opinions of animal welfare. And there have been some kind of very high-profile, egregious kinds of welfare cases that have hit the media. Can you talk about maybe veterinary medicine's role in dealing with
Sure.
the animal welfare issues?
Well, I'll give you my opinion anyway, and I'm sure and veterinarians, we're not all cast in stone. There's a wide philosophical range of opinions on that. And when I was president of the Oregon Veterinary Medical Association, that came home to me. You've got some people where animal welfare is the top issue, and their idea of abuse is very different than some others. In my home state of Oregon, for instance, there's I'd say a third of the state is in the Willamette Valley. That's where most of the population is, and the winters are wet but milder. And you go over the mountains into eastern Oregon, it's high desert where it's cold in the winter but generally sunny, but it's more wide open. And the idea of turning your horses or your cattle loose for the winter and then seeing who comes back in the summer is normal in eastern Oregon. That's just the way it is. If you were to do that in the Willamette Valley, you'd be hauled up in animal abuse. So we have to be mindful that there's different cultures out there, and there's degrees to which you need to deal with the problem. And again, I think that's where the veterinarian, generally speaking, is able to deal with that. The livestock people generally have one view of the world, and some of our urban counterparts that go to great lengths for their loved ones, their animals, have a whole different view of the world. And so it's up to, in my opinion, the veterinary community to engage in public service, whether it's at your local level, the state, or in Congress, and help broker a thoughtful discussion of what is animal welfare, what is aggravated abuse, what's abuse in general, and frankly, as you all know, that changes over time. Our social mores change over time. And again, I'd like to think the veterinarians, being intelligent folks, gone through a lot of education, but also very empathetic and understanding, are the people that can help our country through some of those discussions.
Is this your first commencement address?
Certainly as a congressman it is. I did work at Oregon State University when I was in the state legislature, but very appreciative that Ross University has given me the opportunity to get out in front a little bit and put veterinary medicine on the radar screen for the country at large. And certainly Ross does a great job. A lot of students can't get into the limited number of veterinary schools on the North American continent. So Ross has stepped up, and their class does an excellent job. They're a preferred provider. That we need veterinarians, and Ross is able to produce them. They work well with some of the other institutions. I like that. There's that diversified cross-pollination when they come out in their senior year, to do their clinic rotations and spread out around the country. I think that's healthy for the rest of the country to see these young grads, and you learn from each other in this profession. It's very good.
Is there a piece of advice that you'd like to share with new graduates entering this profession?
Well, you're probably not as smart as you think you are, and take the advice from dinosaurs like me with a grain of salt, but maybe listen a little bit. But be aggressive and be assertive in the way you want to approach veterinary medicine. I think you're the future, and there'll be a great opportunity for you to set the stage for how we deal with all sorts of critical issues going forward in this great country. So I wish them the best, and I'm really proud of the classes that come out of our schools nowadays.